Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So, we'll start with a little bit of a story, and that's going to help put things in perspective. And before I really dive into, we use a book of the month every month, and I have to say that this one, and I generally don't push real hard on them, but this one is timely, is important, and I think speaks to a lot of the challenges and opportunities we have as a society today. So I am highly, 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 highly recommending this book to all of you.
Would you recommend this one to us?
Yeah. I mean, I recommend them all. They're all good. I mean, we take time and we pick them, and it's a thing. But this one in particular has struck me personally deeply. So we'll start with a little bit of the story. I'm going to do an abbreviated version of the story, but it's important. So, Houston Kraft is the author. The book is Deep Kindness, a revolutionary guide for the way we think, talk, and act in kindness. So he starts by telling a story about getting on a plane flight, and he meets a woman who had not been on a plane in several years, and they begin to talking. How many of you traveled for a living? I mean, I did travel for a living for like year and a half, 3 years, and that's flying all over the country. He says you meet interesting people. So he's sitting in the hot dog seat. The hot dog seat is the seat in the middle. And yeah, because you're sitting there and you're encased. Um, and so the lady comes in and she said, "Oh, don't worry, don't bother getting up. I just, I'll slide in," which can be problematic. And so she sits down and she settles in and they begin to talk. And she hadn't been on a plane in a few years. And they begin to chit chat. What do you do for a living? What do you do? And he says, I talk about kindness and in schools, high schools and colleges and so on. And he talks about, his experience in high school, where they had their own little club that was all about practicing kindness. And she looks at him and she says, I have found that kindness is just not normal. And she tells a story. She tells a story about 3 years earlier, she had gotten a phone call, from her father's doctor about, hey, he's not doing well. You might want to come on out. And so she decides to book a plane flight, and she goes to the airport. And when she gets to the airport, she gets a phone call from the doctor saying her father had passed. And so she sat there for the next couple hours, all by herself, crying in the airport. And nobody stopped to ask, to inquire, to say, hey, how can I help? To sit with her. So that pushed our author, Houston Kraft, even further on his journey, even deeper into his journey. And you will hear references to Helga, which is the lady's name, as we go through the book. Kindness is a challenge. I mean, real kindness, deep kindness, as he describes it. There are all kinds of obstacles that we can run into: uncertainty, a sense of incompetence, a fear of not being received well, of maybe overstepping boundaries a little bit. Maybe we're afraid we just don't know how to do it. And today we run into so many things, so many circumstances out in the world that drive us apart. So, not to be a downer per se, but this is important. So, I'm going to go through a list of some of the things that Houston Kraft calls out as challenges to connectedness, as challenges to our engaging with each other in meaningful ways. And it's all here. I was shocked as I went back because I read through the chapters for today, not too quickly, but rapidly the first time through, and I went back to reread it last night, and it really struck me after we got back from Sedona, and all of a sudden all this stuff just stood out for me in just bright, bold colors, for lack of a better term. So here are just a few of the things. The American Psychological Association revealed that the average student today, average college student, has as much anxiety as the average psychiatric patient from the 1950s. Anxiety is increasing in our world, and there are hundreds of reasons that contribute to this amplification of worry. Time Flies, a publication, suggests American adults spend over, brace yourself, 11 hours per day listening to, watching, reading, or interacting with media. Research from University of California, San Diego says that we are exposed to 34 gigabytes of information a day, including over 105,000 words in our waking hours. It is an overwhelm of information that is uncurated and unprocessable. Who will win over time? The battle for our attention. The devices that refresh relentlessly and are programmed to tap into our habits and happiness, or the person in front of us who is rather imperfect and sometimes disagreeable. There is a reason that science fiction novels often warn us that if we aren't conscious and careful, machines can control most of our daily life. Ultimately, apps are easier to deal with than attitudes. I'm going to say that one again. Ultimately, apps are easier to deal with than attitudes. Our profiles, speaking of social media, our profiles provide our most prepackaged personas, and as we browse the catalogs of people on our social media, we are given VIP access to brutal false comparisons. I wish my hair looked like that, or I want my relationship to be like theirs. According to the American Psychological Association, we are lonely. And when we are lonely, we are at risk for cognitive decline, Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease, cancer, inflammatory disease. And on and on and on. Now, what do we do with all of this? So everything I've been talking about, everything we have been talking about so far right now is condition, is our experience based upon what we give priority to, what we hold to be true, what we believe. Am I more interested in what's in my hand or in the people around me? I'm sure there is a balance to be struck. Because for so often, so many of us, this tool is valuable. Right now, I'm sitting here, I've got the YouTube thing going up because I want to see what's going on, right? We now have 7 people watching us on YouTube. Nice. On average, the average Sunday, once it's edited down, anywhere from 40 to 45 in the first week, generally speaking, views. Pretty cool, right? Nice to know that we reach and touch that many people, and it's probably more than that. So, one of the things I learned early on about connection, about phones and things like that, is the phone is there to serve me, not me it. And we have access to all that. We have access to so much data, so much information. And bringing it back to kindness is saying what we want. And Katie and I were talking about this yesterday as I was thinking about the talk and as we're rolling around Sedona. And building the talk is going on in the back of my head all the time. I am seeing a move back to people wanting more real life connection. I am hearing and speaking to more and more people saying, you know what? I'm turning the phone off. I'm leaving it behind. When I go into a restaurant, I leave it in the car because I don't need it. Because I want to be connected to the people. And that's one of the big things that Houston Kraft is talking about. And he's talking about moving into deep kindness. So, one of the things he said, one of the questions he asked early on in the book is, what is your definition of kindness? And perhaps the more important question is, how does your definition of kindness shape the way you interact with the world? What is your definition of kindness? So I'm asking you, what is your definition of kindness? What is kindness for you? Anybody? Come on, don't be shy.
A smile to a stranger.
A smile to a stranger.
Saying hello.
Pardon me?
Saying hello.
Saying hello.
Giving compliments.
Giving compliments.
Being interested in what's going on in somebody's life.
Be interested in what's going on with others and what's going on around us. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, I don't know who said it, but a friend of mine, Christopher Rausch, often says, he seeks to be more interested than interesting.
Seek first to understand before being understood.
That too, yes. That's another part of it, yes. Seek more to be interested than to be interesting. And that's actually one of the things I learned in the Dale Carnegie course I took when I was in high school, was to ask questions, how to ask questions. So those acts of kindness are wonderful. They're for Houston Kraft, that's a good start. He goes on to, he defines kindness at 3 levels. Common kindness is number 1. Please and thank you, politeness and pleasantries. While certainly important and demonstrative of basic respect for others, these acts of kindness aren't necessarily changing anybody's world. They keep turning, but sometimes fail to acknowledge the bigger broken machine. Interesting. It's like one of the things I noticed when I moved from the West Coast to the Midwest at one point was the cultural differences. Opening doors, please and thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. No, ma'am. Politeness. Common courtesies that I grew up, when I was young, that was the way we were. But what I found as I grew older, I grew up mostly on the West Coast. And when I moved to the Midwest, it was like all of a sudden I realized, I had slipped out of that being polite. I had slipped out of that space of courtesy, opening doors for people, so on and so forth. He goes on to say this, because the second definition is confetti kindness, the mass-marketed feel-good kindness that I associate with bright colors, warm fuzzies like pay it forward, and warm fuzzies like pay it forward coffee lines and other random acts. So that's like next level kindness, like paying for the coffee for the person behind you in line. Scattering wildflowers in an open field. Done that. That's fun to watch them pop up later in the year. And then he goes on to the next level, and what he calls deep kindness. Deep kindness, he writes, is the kind of kindness that overcomes selfishness and fear. The sort of generosity that expects nothing in return. The unconditional care that is given despite a person's shortcomings or ugliness. Deep kindness requires something more than politeness or even an honest desire to help. It requires careful self-reflection, profound courage, a willingness to be humbled, and hard-earned social and emotional skills. It is the kindness that stops to help Helga. And so I had to stop and ask myself, would I have stopped to help Helga when I read that? And I had to be very, very honest with myself and say, you know what? It would depend on where I was internally. I would want to. And whether or not I would push through if I was in a bad place myself, I don't know. Quite honestly, I don't know. I would like to think that I would. But if I'm completely honest, I cannot say with 100% certainty that I would. I would like to believe I would. And now maybe today, after reading this and after really contemplating it, hell yeah, I would. But when I read it at first, I was like, yeah. Because the kind of kindness he's talking about, we talk about here all the time. He encourages us to, rather than practicing confetti kindness, he wants us to throw kindness around like it is the most important resource, the most important and meaningful resource we have. And you know what the good news is? The good news is it's an unlimited resource. And its only limitation is the limitation we put upon it ourselves. Because we hold to be true that the givingness of spirit, which is what this practice is, deep kindness, the givingness of spirit is love. And that God is love, spirit, infinite spirit is love, divine life is love, and that is flowing through us all the time and only limited by our concept of limitation we put upon it ourselves in any given moment. And day to day, moment to moment, hour to hour, who knows? We are human. Some days, my cup is more full than the next. And some days I feel like I'm, giving from an empty cup. And some days I feel like I'm giving from the saucer. And that depends on how I'm taking care of me, how I'm feeling about me, how I am doing with my own process. And you know what? Sometimes if I run into that opportunity to practice that givingness, to open myself up, maybe that practice in that moment is something that fills me too. That I get my own sense of littleness out of the way just long enough for the Spirit to move through me and lift me up while I am in the process of lifting up somebody else. Because all of a sudden, my problems don't seem so bad. All of a sudden, my little frustration about the fact that I got halfway down the road and realized that I forgot my AirPods, and I have to turn around and go back home and get them. And now I'm all irritated, and then I run across somebody, I see somebody that could use my help, and I stop and I help them. And all of a sudden, that's not such an irritation anymore. It's not such a big deal. And I know I'm not alone in that. There is so much opportunity for us in this. Houston goes on to write this. He makes a couple of notes here about the kind of kindness the world needs. He says, the kind of kindness the world needs is one that starts with understanding. It is the kind that willingly climbs the mountain that is anxiety and knows that connection is cultivated, not clicked on. Cultivated, not clicked on. It is the kind that realizes that kindness isn't a nice to have, but a must have. Perhaps it is not a supplement or a pain reliever at all, but rather a fundamentally key ingredient in helping heal a deeply wounded world. So how do we do that? How do we connect? I am not saying that there are not valuable connections to be made in the internet-like world. I am fully active in that on a daily basis. And it has created connections for me that I could not have imagined I would ever have with people that have been incredibly influential in my life. It's where Katie and I met. And she's just one example of the amazing people that I have managed to meet, who have helped me learn and grow. And I know that there was a point in the not too distant past where I was so engaged online that I lost track of what was going on in my world. I lost what we would call positive control over what's going on out here in 3D land, right? So I'm still seeking to find that balance between the two, to maintaining those relationships, but also looking at them and saying, okay, how are these relationships making a difference in my life today? And if I don't connect with them at least once a week, are they going to go away? No, because if they're truly meaningful, they will always be there. And I know how to find them. And when it comes to practicing this kindness, the part of that kindness starts with me really coming to terms with what's going on in here. Really coming to terms with it and saying, how do I get to a point where I am fully comfortable with me? Where I am okay sitting in the stillness and quiet with me for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, a half a day or more. Without having to reach out, without having to check in online and look for the clicks and likes and all the stuff? Can I do that? And am I okay if I don't? And becoming comfortable with me means that I can find space to be comfortable, to help others be comfortable with themselves, to love and support others in becoming that, in feeling safe and secure in their own world, their own lives, where we come together for the common good and support each other and love each other and celebrate each other and give each other the care and comfort that we all desire here, first and foremost. He goes on to write, the kind of kindness the world needs is rooted in a desire for the common good. It is the kind willing to get sweaty in pursuit of selflessness and to do the hard work necessary to cultivate their character, their habits toward compassion. And he says three main things that get in the way. I know I'm running long. We're going to wrap it up here in just a minute. What gets in the way? And we'll be talking more about this. Incompetence. When I don't know how to do a thing, I tend to avoid that thing. If the action of kindness requires a skill that I'm not very skilled at yet, then I'll typically avoid that action or exercise and do what feels comfortable. Okay, that's the end of that part. Because we don't want to ask for help, right? Because we get insecure. And that's the next one, insecurity. When I'm afraid of a thing, sometimes I avoid that thing. Every compassionate action we take exposes us to a variety of risks like being judged, embarrassed, dismissed, or laughed at, or feeling like a failure. I am worried about failing. And maybe I'm just too scared to stop and engage. Inconvenience. If I don't feel like doing a thing, sometimes I avoid that thing. On any given day, we might feel tired, busy, overworked, hurt, or hungry, or any number of other human emotions that actually make kindness harder. Is it okay to be human? Is it okay to be human? Sometimes, if we look out in the world, if we look at media, it's tough. It can be real tough. It can be very, very, very tough. But I'm here to say that we are enough. You are enough. I am enough. That love points the way for each and every one of us. Love is the givingness of spirit for us. As us. And the path to this deep kindness that Houston Kraft is talking about is one that takes courage, one that takes commitment to ourselves and others, one that takes us to a place where we get to learn and grow and to bring others along with us. To bring others along with us. It is a journey of awakening, a journey of wholeness, a journey of happiness. And is filled with tears. Tears of joy, tears of sadness, tears of release along the way. Deep kindness, he says, requires the messiest type of work. The kind that acknowledges that I am both the root of the problem and the potential source of the solution. We are that solution. We must embrace the mess to make kindness normal. To make kindness normal. The challenge of deep kindness is what makes it so worthwhile, life-shaping and world-changing. It is all of that. all of that, and so, so much more. So now it's your turn. Questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, open mic time. Anybody? Yep.
Thank you, Reverend Lee.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I want to say that if I had taken shorthand in school, I would have had a litany of stuff to say to you. The one thing that really sticks out for me is how angry I get with myself in retrospect when I have an opportunity to help someone and I don't. And then it haunts me over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, sometimes we just need to push through our fear, let love point the way,
Mm-hmm.
and just allow it to happen.
Thank you, Nancy. Anybody? Steve?
To your point, sometimes we don't give ourselves credit for being kind. I had a call from a friend yesterday morning that said, "Hey, I'm starting a new job. My girlfriend and I, our Airbnb just went south for whatever reason. Can you put us up for a few days?" I said, "Absolutely." And it's just we got a 2-bedroom condo, but needed help, and I, without a thought, just said yes.
Bravo. Bravo. Thank you. Anybody else?
A decade ago marked the end of 4 years as a Starbucks barista for me back in Washington, just south of Seattle. And I liked to play a game. I am also that Starbucks barista personality, in case you don't get that. Those of you that know me know I love to talk to people. And so that part of the job was easy, which wasn't easy for everybody that I worked with. But I thrived being on the drive-through in the early morning rush. Lots of people to talk to, give some coffee, be a bright spot in their day. And I like to play a little game with the customers that seemed surly or just not talkative or wouldn't make eye contact for whatever reason. And this one guy stands out. He was probably 5 or 6 years older than I was at the time, and he would come by 5:30 in the morning, and he would get one of two drinks: a venti caramel or caramel or coffee frappuccino. And so after being at this store, I transferred to a store partway through my career there. And so at this new store, I've been seeing him for a couple of weeks and fine. And he was just always kind of like avoidant. He's just like in his own world, a little awkward, probably a little autistic, and wearing a jumpsuit like he was going to work at a shop and didn't have a name tag. So eventually I was like, hey, like, I know your drink. My name's Katie. I didn't get your name. And he's like, Joseph. And I was like, cool. And so then we also had a camera out at the ordering box. So like he pulled up the next morning and I was like, hey, Joseph, are you going to get your caramel or coffee frappuccino? And his face just lit up because people like to be remembered, right? And to the point where, then he would talk to me a little bit at the window. And then I was covering a shift at a different store a few months later and he showed up there. And I was like, Joseph, are you cheating on us? And he's like, what are you doing here? No. It's just because I'm down here for work. So, and the point of that being is that kindness is free. And I built that rapport with many of my customers that I got to know better than that, and their kids and their dogs that they brought in on the weekend. And then there was one lady who had a really devastating life event where she lost her daughter. And she hadn't been in for a week. And then she came through, but her friend was driving. And I was like, oh my gosh, Lori, I haven't seen you all week. And then she told me the really, really terrible news. And I was like, well, your coffee's on me today. Come back and see me every day this week and you got free coffee. It's the least I can do. It costs Starbucks 70 cents. And the barista standing next to me was like, wow, Katie, people just tell you shit. And I was like, because they know I'm actually listening and I care. So not only is kindness free, it fosters, like Lee was saying, any kind of ripple effect that you're not aware of, right? So the fact that that woman was able to open up to me, and like that young gentleman, maybe I was the only person that was nice to him all day or all week, or he hated his job, or who knows, right? I don't know. I just want it to be a moment of brightness and kindness.
Thank you. Okay, last one. Good morning.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Talking about the value of the tools of social media, that does exist. But a few years ago, there was a special called The Social Dilemma. And it was the programmers and developers of these applications and programs talking about how they make it addictive and how you get sucked in, and then of course advertised to on top of it. After I watched that, I decided not to maintain my illusion of my life on Facebook. I literally closed the app and didn't look at it for 2 years. I no longer needed to renew my prescription for anti-anxiety medicine. I stopped using tranquilizers when I gave up Facebook.
Wow.
Beverly, this is not a comment, but those numbers that you gave us, the enormous, that
Yeah.
staggering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your thought on that?
Too long. Too long. Fundamentally, it is about caring for each other. That is fundamentally it. Being able to care for each other. So, practicing the principles this week. Let's do this. This week, set the daily intention. I am open to and willing to act on opportunities to be kind. Every day. But consciously, just consciously setting the intention. And then at the end of the day, take note. How did it go? How did you manage to raise your kindness quotient that day? And just spending a week just being very conscious and intentional about it. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with kindness this week. Thank you all for your patience this morning. Ran a little bit long, but I got very passionate about this topic today. And this month, I'm excited about where this is going to go.
We're being kind to you.
Oh, thank you. So let's pray this morning. Excuse me, how wonder, okay, water. How wonderful it is this morning that we can take the time to be awake, to acknowledge the infinite power and presence that is God as each and every one of us. And as we have gathered here this morning, we move forward into this day and the rest of this week, knowing that all is well, that life is good, that we are conscious, able, and willing to practice kindness, to step even deeper into the practice. We can open doors and say thank you and good morning and smile, and that is wonderful. We can practice random acts of kindness and beauty, and that is wonderful. And we carry it deeper now, deeper to where we connect and we stay present with what is in front of us. We share love with those who need to be lifted up. We hold that hug just a couple seconds longer, to listen just a little more deeply, to seek to understand